By the end of 2023, there were almost 400,000 children between the ages of 6 months and 18 years in the foster care system throughout the United States. A large number of these children struggle with emotional and mental health issues, drug addiction, incarceration, and even suicide. Today, we're going to focus on the why, and you're going to meet a courageous young woman who is defying the odds. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us an opportunity to talk a little bit more about, your background. Just tell everybody who you are.
Well, my name is Brianna. I'm 24. I'm a single mother, and I'm from Columbia, South Carolina.
South Carolina. And why don't you tell who's ever watching how we know each other?
Well, I was in a group home, and you were there volunteering for a couple years. That's how we met.
So people know a group home is where they take kids when they're removed from their own home as they wait for a foster family. And so I was volunteering there, and that's where we met. They say that children are removed from their home and put into the foster care system because of neglect or abuse. And I've always felt that term to be very understated. It's always much, much worse than just the terms neglect and abuse.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I do.
And do you remember the day that it happened to you and your two sisters?
I do.
And
Like it was yesterday. Yeah.
would you mind sharing that?
Well, me and my sisters were in school. I don't remember what class I was in, but I just remember being called to the front office and seeing a police officer, and he kind of just sat on the floor because I was sitting in a chair, and he said that, I'm going someplace that I don't know, and it's going to be, sorry. It's going to be a new environment. And, I was scared. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you're not going to be home. He was like, you're not going to be with your mommy anymore. You're going someplace with a lot of strangers. So we're just going to have to take you to my vehicle and go pick up your sisters. And I kind of resisted. And I was like, no, I want my mom. I was like, I'm not going with you. But it took I think 2 other people to calm me down. I think it was one of the ladies at the front desk, and they eventually got me to calm down. And I got in the car, and I remember the drive there. All I remember is looking at this church. I don't remember the name of the church, but that's the only thing I remember, is looking at a church. Everything else was just kind of a blur. We got there. I just remember looking out and just looking at everything just scared, and everything's new, and I just felt kind of like, I can't really describe it. I wouldn't say empty, but I was really scared. Yeah.
Do you remember how old you were?
It was literally a day after my 13th birthday.
And so you weren't taken away as an infant, so you had a relationship with your mother.
Yeah.
13 years old. And your 2 younger sisters, how old were they?
Either 7 and 8 or 8 and 9. They were still pretty young.
All 3 of you had a relationship with your mom.
We did.
And they picked you up at school in, was it a police car?
There was a police there, but I think we got into the DSS van.
The DSS van?
Yeah.
And then they drove you out to the group home. I know this is uncomfortable to talk about, but Were you, even though you were sad, right? Because nobody wants to be taken from their home. Were you surprised?
In all honesty, no. Because there was this one, I think she was my caseworker. There probably was another lady that came out once, but then I think it was my caseworker that kept coming out before we actually got taken away. Every time my mother would tell me, or I think the first couple times she would tell me, I guess because she had already knew who it was, she would tell me to tell whoever was at the door that she was asleep or she wasn't home or something. So I had to cover for her and lie and, say she was sick or she was asleep or she wasn't home. But I think after all of the visits, they picked up on that, I was covering for her. Mm-hmm. Half of the time she was laid out in the bed, hungover, passed out, or whatever. So.
Thank you for sharing that with us. At the group home I was volunteering at, where you showed up with your sisters, there were 42 kids in that group home, mm-hmm. and they're always shuffling kids out. And that's kind of a good thing, because if they leave, they're either going home or they found the foster home. Mm-hmm. And no kid really likes being there. They don't. But I still think that the home did a pretty good job, because they have to instill discipline and structure. They have mm-hmm. to teach you adult skills and things like that. So I'm just curious, what are your memories of the group home?
A lot of things were a blur, but I just remember whenever you would come, and honestly, that would be like the only time that I actually felt safe and comfortable.
When?
When
I was there?
Yeah.
I was only there like once a week for a few hours.
Yeah. That was because you would talk to me and, I would just be comfortable. I felt like I can open up and be myself. And the other time, I just felt like I was basically in a jail cell. Other kids might feel a little different, but I'm speaking for myself. I felt like I was in a jail cell because I was never understood. Nobody was actually ever there for me, or, wanted to spend time with me or anything like that. I mean, there was like maybe a handful of staff that was, there for me and nice to me and things like that. But everybody else was just like, you're here, so what, It was just a lot of negativity and bad memories for me. I mean, now I'm over it, but it was hard for me to deal with for a long time.
Yeah, I know that the kids kind of feel like that, especially the older ones, because there's a lot of structure and, the scheduling and all that. So prison is not the first time I've heard that word. Okay. So you mentioned something about a certain comfort level with me. Mm-hmm. So maybe what you didn't know is, do you remember Santana? She was the weekend manager.
I do.
Yeah, she actually came up to me and said, I want you to go and talk to that girl over there. Her name is Brianna. She's having a really hard time. And I said, when did she come in? And she said, like Wednesday, and this was Saturday. So I said to her, well, I'll talk to her, but how do you not have a hard time? Like, I don't know what they expect. Like, we use the word prison, and I've heard that before. I also have explained that even though it feels like prison to the kids, a lot of what they did was necessary and, incredibly important. Mm-hmm. But how long were you and your sisters in the home?
Well, that was kind of the issue because we were not supposed to be in there that long. There was a lot of kids that were in and out. Some was, a couple days to weeks or longer, like us. We were there for over 3 years.
Over 3 years?
Yeah.
That had to be hard. Like, you're getting up every day thinking, like, when's the last day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Like, I'm kind of curious. You know, like, you're in that group home. You get up every day. You're there 2 years. What were you thinking? Do you remember? Like, were you thinking like we're never going to get out of here?
Well, me personally, I knew we were never going to go back. I mean, a lot of kids, you know, they have no idea or anything like that. But me, like I said, personally, I just knew in the back of my mind that we were never going to go back because of the condition that she was in and still is. The way she was at the visits, you know, I smell alcohol on her breath, and sometimes she wouldn't show up, and if she did, sometimes she was late. I kind of knew we weren't going to go back, but I was just thinking to myself, like, well, if we're not going to go back, then what's going to happen to us? Like, are we going to stay here until we just age out of the system? Or, you know, I just had no idea. But I did know for sure that we were never going to go back home.
So as we're going through this, I'm thinking about, you know, what your life must have been like. And then taken from your actual home at 13, not at 1, like you wouldn't remember.
Yeah.
And then your mom showing up at those meetings with being hungover or maybe even drunk or not showing up at all. Mm-hmm. That had to be like unbelievably traumatic. Like, I can't imagine.
It was definitely traumatic.
When I was getting my foster license, they teach us about trauma and kids. You have to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. And they have something called ACE scores, which stands for Adverse Child Experiences. You probably learned a little bit about that.
I did.
Yeah. And so that measures all types of trauma. It measures physical abuse, but also emotional abuse. It talks about, you know, sexual stuff that it's hard to even think about kids being sexually abused, but also drug use in the home, incarceration, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to read something here because I don't want to misquote anything. So it's a simple questionnaire, right? It's 10 questions. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And so if you have an ACE score of 4 or more, or kids that have an ACE score of 4 or more, they're 4.5 times more likely to suffer from depression, 10 times more likely to use drugs, and 15 times more likely to commit suicide. And that's with a 4. And I know that there are kids with higher scores than that. An ACE score of 7 or more severely impacts the developing brains and bodies of children, which includes things like impulse control and executive function. They're significantly more likely to contract hepatitis, get lung cancer, heart disease. Over 50% of people in prison have an ACE score of 7 or more. And it also leads to experimenting with drugs, like using much worse drugs. But to me, the worst thing I heard is that they're 30 times more likely to commit suicide. That's their 7. And so I guess you learned about it like I did, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember what your ACE score was?
It was a 9.
A 9. Mm-hmm. So I learned that, and it was hard for me just to learn it. You experienced it. So knowing that about yourself, how hard is it just like to cope every day and find a job and try to have a normal life?
It was really hard. For the longest, I just felt lost, empty. I had a lot of anger. I started to feel resentment. I just had a lot of negative emotions and thoughts I mean, even after me and my sisters got adopted, I wasn't happy. I mean, I was glad that I was out of the group home, but being at the house that I was with the family, I mean, like I said, I was relieved that I wasn't there anymore. Over time, I did become like better. It took me a very long time to, get over and heal from like everything that I went through, and even at the group home and things.
You said recover, but there's no way that you completely recover from anything like that.
Yeah, you can kind of say that. I mean, you never really fully recover from, very traumatic and, traumatizing things. You just, over time, learn to cope. And, I mean, you do heal from it, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of time and healing. And a lot of people, and I even thought this myself, that, I mean, you have to have at least one person that you can count on to be there, anytime you need something or, just to talk, vent, whatever it is. You just have to have at least one person. For the longest, I thought that, I don't need anybody, forget y'all. And, I just had a lot of negative things, emotions, thoughts, and all that. But, I've always had that one person that was there for me, and I pushed that one person away at one point, and I just, to a certain point, I had to isolate myself to really get myself together. And what really made me, like, have like a light under my butt was my daughter. When I got pregnant with her, before I got pregnant with her, I just felt like I was at the end of my rope. And when I found out I was pregnant, which was definitely unexpected, I was kind of like, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do? Like, the position that I was in and where I was at in my life, I was like, I don't know that I'm ready for a kid. But I was like, if I have this kid, then, this would definitely be my motivation, my happiness, that she's gonna, at the time I didn't know she was a girl, but because I had just found out I was pregnant. But it took me a minute to process the fact that I was pregnant. But once I realized and like reality hit me, that was my motivation. I worked all the way up until the last week of my pregnancy. I still did. I wanted to work until, I went into labor, but my manager wouldn't let me. She, like I said, she's always been my motivation, and she's the reason why she's the reason why I'm the person I am today, and the reason why I've made changes and everything in my life.
Would it be okay if we brought her on camera?
Yeah.
Can someone?
Come here. Hey, baby. It's okay. No.
So she's your motivation, huh?
Yeah.
So, but you wouldn't recommend somebody having a baby just to... I'm kidding.
I mean, don't just go out popping babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For no reason, really. And it's not just because of my daughter. Out of every person that I know majority of people have, you know, been addicted to drugs, alcoholics, you know, just not in a good place in their life. You know, they've either committed suicide, you know, attempted, you know, cut themselves. I just feel very blessed because I never turned to drugs, I never turned to alcohol, and I have a couple people that, you know, I can count on and that I can go to.
What do you need help with right now?
Well, I do need a job. I'm not able to work right now because I can't afford childcare, and I have nobody that's able to watch her for me. So it's definitely hard for me to find a job and keep one.
So what you really need help with is childcare. If you could afford the childcare, then you could go back to work.
Yes.
But it's kind of a dilemma because if you put your daughter in childcare and went to work, all the money would go towards the childcare, right?
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately.
okay, I understand. Before we finish up today, there's just a couple more questions. It's possible, probably likely, that people that are considering becoming foster parents might be listening to you right now. So for somebody that is considering maybe fostering or adoption, based on everything you've learned and experienced, what would you tell them?
Well, I would definitely tell them to be very, very, and I mean extremely patient, be very loving and caring, and, you know, just be understanding. I mean, you might not understand or know everything that that child or children have been through. You know, if you really want to foster or adopt, don't do it just for the money. Don't.
There are people that do that. They do it just for the money because they get reimbursed by the state or the county.
Yeah. Just don't do that. Do it out of the kindness of your heart. Do it because you want to. Don't, like I said, just do not do it for whatever reason. If you really want to do something like that, you have to put your all into that. Not just, there has to be a really good reason.
Thank you. I think that'll make a great impact. Now, what about kids that are in group homes or foster care? Same thing. There might be, let's say, for example, they're showing this to kids at the group home that you were in. What would you tell them?
Well, I would kind of tell them, that's kind of a hard question. I would tell them, you know, just to keep your head up. I know it's hard because I've been there. I know you might miss your mom and your daddy, but you're there for a reason. So just like I said, keep your head up. Do what you have to do for yourself. Don't stress yourself out about when am I gonna go home. You know, just keep your head up. You know, focus on yourself. I mean, I know it's hard, but you have to keep your mental right. Because there has been a lot, I don't know the percentage or like the number or anything like that, but there's a lot. And I know this from experience, like the kids that I was in the group home with. And I mean, I keep up with some of them on social media, and sometimes I look them up if I don't have them on my social media, but a lot of them have ended up in jail, ended up in prison, ended up being drug addicts, alcoholics, just popping kids out left or right for what, I don't know what the reasoning is. Just, you know, you definitely, and I can say this for myself because I it was really, really hard for me, but obviously I, got through it. You don't want to go down the wrong road. I do want to tell the kids that are watching, definitely do not give up on yourself no matter what. Because at the end, it'll be worth it. You'll get through it.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that brings up some difficult memories for you, right? To think about being back in the group home environment. Mm-hmm. So I started this channel called Be Resilient to focus on people that have had extraordinary things happen to them, mm-hmm. And so obviously your history, your background has been just incredibly traumatic. It's hard for me to think about it. It was hard for me to talk to you about it and bring up those wounds. So you're a single mom. We talked about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think, like, you're thinking about your background, stuff that happened between you and your mother. You mentioned just a few things, but I'm sure you left the really bad stuff out.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about now when you're being a mom to your daughter? Like, what goes through your mind? I'm sure you're thinking that you want to do the opposite. What are you thinking every day as a mom yourself now?
Well, with everything that I went through, that definitely gave me the motivation to be the best parent I can ever be. Because I would never want my daughter, and if I have kids in the future, I would never, ever want them to go through anything that I've ever went through.
And that's why you said she motivates you, right? That's
Yeah.
why you would never drink or do drugs and never hit her.
Yeah. There is times where, and I know it's a part of, being a parent, there's times where I have to kind of, yell at her or, pop her and things like that. It hurts me to do that because it kind of reminds me of what I went through. And it's an everyday thing, which I'm still dealing with. Thank you. I'm still dealing with, I don't let that hold me back by no means, but it definitely is a really, really big challenge as, being a parent. Because, like we've talked about before, everything that I went through was very traumatic, and just me being a mother, that just gives me the motivation to, like I said, be the best parent that I can be, and, give her the life and the childhood that I never had. Because I wouldn't, like I said before, I definitely do not want her or my future children to experience or have to deal with anything that I've ever dealt with. And because those kind of things, how you are brought up as a child and what you go through and what you see and everything, definitely has a big impact on not only your childhood, but your adulthood, your whole life, really.
So you said, give her the childhood you never had.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's just very refreshing to hear. That's a good way to explain it. So Thank you for that. So you mentioned about being a single parent, and we can imagine it's difficult because, like your mother, right? But
yeah.
You mentioned nothing about the baby's father, about an extended family, about friends that may or may not be able to help. How hard is that now? What's going on with that?
Well, it's truly hard, but I'm managing. It's definitely hard because when I had her, I didn't have nobody. The father wasn't around. I didn't have family, friends. I had nobody. I was very sleep deprived for days and days on end. I've never really been able to get sleep up until today.
The baby's father, is he not active? Did he take off? Did he bolt? Does he talk to you? What kind of support is he providing?
Her father doesn't help in no way at all. He doesn't pay child support. He doesn't do anything. He only wants access to her as well as his grandmother. I mean, not his grandmother, his mother. They don't help me in any kind of way. Like I said, they just want access to her. They don't want anything to do with me or to help me in any way that they can. So it's just me. Like I said before, I don't have any friends or family. I do not get a break. She's with me day in and day out. She's by my side, or at least in my eyesight. I can't leave the room without her screaming and crying because she has to be within at least eye distance with me. She doesn't really like to be by herself unless like she's playing with her toys or, distracted by something. But it's definitely hard being a single mother, getting up especially the newborn stage. I mean, I love it. I mean, in the moment, I was like very miserable. But I mean, I love my daughter, so I was going to do anything, that I had to do. And I put up with it because I brought her into this world and it's my responsibility, not just mine, but it's my responsibility to take care of her and provide for her. So I did what I had to do. I woke up every hour or two of the night and, fed her, changed her diaper. So like I said, I didn't get much sleep, but I did it because I love her.
I would imagine then that being that how old is she now?
She's 1.
Exactly 1? Or like?
She's a year and 4 months.
4 months, so she's 16 months old.
Yeah.
I would imagine at this point that childcare is not just critical, but it would be tremendously beneficial to you and to her because of the schooling and socialization, right? And then it would allow you to go out and get a real job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully, that'll come through for you. That's something that hopefully you'll be able to get that soon. So, Mark Twain once said, the happiest days in a person's life is the day they were born and the day they find out why. Can you answer why you were born?
I feel like I was brought into this world with a very high purpose. I feel like I'm here to help other people, not just children, but people that struggle with depression, anxiety, opening up, anything of that sort. I feel like I'm meant to help people, emotionally, mentally. I feel like that's my purpose.
And also being a single mom.
Yeah, and being a single mom and, showing people that it's hard, but if you really put your all and put yourself into it, you can do it. There's nothing in this world that can stop you if you're really determined to be successful in it.
Thank you. That was very encouraging to hear. I'm hoping that you'll encourage and inspire kids in foster care and also the many other single parents that are having a hard time. So I really want to thank you for opening up. It was important for me. It was hard for me to sit here and hear some of those things, but I think that a lot of people will feel inspired by what you said. So thank you very much for sharing that today.
You're welcome.
Brianna mentioned that her ACE score was a 9. And that's something that can't be overstated. If you are a single parent with children that have been affected by trauma, or you're potentially a foster parent considering fostering or adopting, or even just a school teacher, you have to understand the significance of these statistics. I explained that children with an ACE score of 7 or more have problems with impulse control and executive function. Imagine being in junior high school or high school and having problems with impulse control, or the inability to say no to something that's bad for you, or being in college and having executive functioning skills that are hindered and maybe never going to class because of that. More importantly, 70% of young adults in prison, ages 25 or less, have an ACE score of 7 or more. And children with an ACE score of 7 or more are significantly less likely to even see their 25th birthday. And these are the reasons why Brianna is defying the odds.